Hi, I'm Zerx. Thanks for clicking on this video. For that, I'm going to bathe myself with all the Mega Man games I hear it. Ow, ow.
They didn't come all at once.
I heard them and I got scared. So besides dumping a bunch of plastic on myself, I also wanted to start this video off by reflecting a bit on where Mega Man is as a franchise. First, I am a bit sad to see how things have gone for the blue little guy and his posterity nowadays. Sadly, due to terrible management, greedy business practices, and depending on who you ask, a clueless executive and series director grandfathered in from the start, Mega Man has slowly faded into the subconscious of gaming as a whole and regulated to guest appearance nostalgia bait as a way to make easy cash on low effort cosmetic DLC slop. Back when Capcom was trying to salvage their image, they revamped their older franchises in the mid to late 2010s with the likes of Street Fighter V and Resident Evil 7. Mega Man would have the Legacy collections released in 2015 as what seemed to be a way to gauge interest in the series, and it sold well enough that within 3 years Capcom would drop Mega Man 11, and it started to seem like things were starting to look up for everyone. Despite a rough release, Street Fighter V went on to being one of the most played competitive fighting games, and Resident Evil 7 brought back the series to its roots and restored faith in the franchise. And Mega Man 11 came and went and has gone MIA again. Sorta. We would get new games technically, but those would be other legacy collections for the other spin-off titles like X, Zero, ZX, and Battle Network, but no new original additions to the classic titles or the other spin-offs for that matter, putting the franchise in a weird limbo once more. To be honest, I have a feeling that Capcom's IP sitting comes from more of a place of not knowing where to take the franchise rather than straight up malice, but I also think that if there's any other time to experiment and at least try to make something exciting and new for everybody involved, it would be now that expectations are low. Either way, while us fans wait, I wanted to make a cool little passion project during this hiatus, so I decided to play, review, and rank the main numbered games starting with the classic series. To make a long story short, the first video game I ever played was Mega Man X4 on the PS1, and since then, the franchise has meant the world to me, and I literally made my name a mashup of these two characters when I was 14, and now I wanted to do something cool to introduce people and to show my appreciation for the Blue Robot Man. Okay, last thing before we start, I am playing all the games through the Legacy collection on my PC as well as Mega Man 11. However, I won't be state saving or using the rewind feature in the first Legacy collection. Hopefully, if you're using this tier list as a gateway into the series, please by all means use these features as they allow for more people to enjoy these games, and even as an enthusiast, I can recognize that some of these things in this series are bullshit. So, with that being said, here's my tier list template. Jesus Christ. Here's my tier list template, and each game will be ordered. And though I am a person to judge things off of vibe and I'm not, too critical of things, I will try to be critical when I can. And remember, these are my opinions, so if I say something stupid, it's probably because it is, alright? So, let's do this. I know what you might be thinking. Serge, you never told us what you're going to take into consideration when ranking these games. How are you going to be... Hold on. Shut the fuck up. The factors that I took into considerations were these. Level design, weapon design, and how much I enjoyed myself overall were the important ones. Some other factors that I took into account were music, visual aesthetics, and presentation. Also, these rankings are self-contained, meaning that the games are being compared to each other. I personally don't think that there's a bad Mega Man game in the classic series. Bad in the sense that they're too janky or poorly put together. I think the worst thing I have to say about this series is that some of the games can be boring, but these games are so consistent across the board that honestly, it's just my opinion, don't kill me. If you kind of played one, you've kind of sort of played them all, but who cares? Let's get into the development history of Mega Man 1. From the mid to late 1980s, Japanese companies were attempting to make the mad dash to break into the nation's new and bustling home console market that was essentially created by Nintendo's Famicom. Capcom, an already established and successful arcade company, began porting over their popular arcade games to this console, but sometime around the start of 1987, Capcom would also want to create a game that would distinguish itself from the arcade shooters that they were known for at the time. The company brought together a team to bring this unique experience to home consoles with the likes of Nobuyuki Matsushima, artist Yasuaki Kishimoto and Naiwa Tomita, music composer Manami Matsume, sound programmer Yoshihiro Sakaguchi, and lastly our main focus for this little history lesson, Akira Kitamura, the game's planner who would be the de facto director for this new project. In a 2011 interview with artist Hitoshi Ariga, Kitamura would go on to say that he was originally hired as a graphic designer at Capcom, but was extremely captivated by the field of game design and quickly requested to be a game planner for the company. Think of a planner as a producer nowadays. Admittedly, he said that he had so much to learn about game design during his early years as a developer, but as he worked on projects and devoted himself to playing and studying various games to learn more about how to make a fun experience for the player and develop his own philosophy on game design, he saw this project as the perfect opportunity to put his knowledge to the test. Kitamura envisioned this game as a shmups or an action game in a similar style to that, but given the limitations of the console, decided to go with a game that had a few number of enemies on screen at a time. He'd set personal goals and rules for himself that would serve as significant foundations for this new game, and almost 40 years later, foundations that we would see in much of the franchise today. One of the rules was ensuring each stage would take an hour or less to complete to encourage the player to replay the game. You see, Kitamura thought that games at the time would tend to have a place where the difficulty would spike, which would sour the overall experience for the player and discourage them from wanting to come back to the game, but also thought that these sections were the points in which the player truly interacted with the game's core mechanics.
No matter what game, it's those difficulty spikes that become the bottleneck for players and leaves them with the impression that the game was too hard, and yet, at the same time, it's a fact that those tough parts also comprise some of the core gameplay in any game. Going through those games taught me something important though. I started to think that if I focused on more detailed, intricate enemy behavior and placement, then I could probably achieve a better difficulty balance than what action games had offered so far.
With that thought in Kitamura's mind, he had set several guidelines for the enemies in his game, like their placement and general behavior, so that he can avoid this bottleneck. For example, he wanted each section to have waves of 3 or 4 of the same enemies at a time, then increasing the difficulty with each progressive wave with different enemies or different terrain that would require the player to deal with the same enemies in a uniquely different way, and then providing players with some breathing room by reverting to weaker enemies towards the end of the stage. One of his early gameplay systems featured a player character with scissors and having that hero cut down obstacles and foes along the way. He wanted to incorporate a rock paper scissors mechanic that the player would have to consider when fighting enemies and boss characters. However, as the team developed additional designs and systems, it was decided that the hero should be able to acquire different kinds of abilities throughout the game instead of having the player just use scissors. Kitamura during this brainstorming period also considered using helmets with elemental icons to represent different abilities, but at some point the idea was rejected. However, Matsushima, the game's programmer, had the idea of the main character changing colors based on the abilities equipped. This idea was so graphically demanding for the time because this would mean that the character would acquire 2 sets of sprites, one outlining the character and the other one that would be showing the different color schemes to represent each different ability. Regardless of the intensity, Kitamura thought that this idea was so cool that this would be the direction that the team would go in and would begin to finalize their designs for this game and this new character. Kitamura decided that a world set in the future with robots would be the most appropriate setting for this game. He drew inspirations from different media from his childhood and adolescence. For example, a main point of inspiration would come from a genre of TV show in Japan known as Totsuka. Shows and manga like Kikaider, Kamen Rider, and Ninja Captor would influence the aesthetic of this game. Kitamura also states that another major influence on the setting and tone of his world was the work from the one and only Osamu Tezuka, specifically Astro Boy and Hinotori.
Since I was little, I loved drawing, and I used to doodle all sorts of characters in the margins of my notebook. They included many heroes I had seen in manga and on TV. Astro Boy was one of them, Tezuka's characters. When I was in junior high, Hinotori by Osamu Tezuka was reissued. The sweeping story that spread across those large pages left a deep and unforgettable impact on me, and it's no exaggeration to say that it completely changed my worldview.
The morally gray and emotionally complex stories of Tezuka would drive Kitamura to make a protagonist that isn't just a hero from the start, so it was decided that the main character would be a small helper robot first, before becoming the character the player would control later. Originally, Kitamura wanted this character's default color scheme to be white, to make the other color schemes from the abilities he would acquire throughout the game to pop more, but in order to reflect the idea of a somewhat distant, aloof, and almost emotionless hero, picking blue was a compromise that he would have to take, since any warmer color would remove that coolness and somberness that Kitamura was looking for, and any lighter color would give off a weak appearance. And coincidentally enough, blue was the color that the Famicom had the most shades to pick from, so from that point in development, the famous blue two-tone was decided on, and the protagonist had finally taken shape.
A small robot, just 24 pixels tall, stood alone on a monitor in the corner of a development booth. That was the very first step in creating Rockman.
Mid-development, Capcom would add another concept artist to the team, a young man by the name of Keiji Inafune. Inafune had just finished working on Capcom's latest arcade game named Street Fighter and has now been put on this team, with his main task being that he had to draw all the team's in-game pixel art as well as helping create new characters and designs for this game. I knew absolutely nothing about what it takes to create a game when I was thrusted into the Rockman team, in a position where I would be responsible for the characters. By the time I joined in, Cutman, Iceman, Gutsman, and Fireman were already taking form. Inafune would also help the team work on what they were going to call this little robot, as he had to design the logo for him as well. Names like Mighty Kid, Knuckle Kid, and Niji no Senshi Mirakuru Kiro were pitched around, but ultimately the team would decide to use Rock to name their main character and pair it with his sister character Roll to complete the music pun. The team of 7 continued their work until the end of the year, where they had finally finished and Kitamura and his team went to the sales department to show off what they made. The reaction from the sales department was not what they wanted to hear though, to put it lightly. The sales department essentially wrote back to them, "Ain't no one buying this TS," in parentheses this shit followed by 3 wilted emojis or something like that. I might be paraphrasing, but since the game was already completed, Capcom decided that a limited run would be the best way to cut their predicted losses, and so on December 17th, 1987, Rockman was released in Japan for the Famicom. To the company's surprise and to the team's relief, Rockman had actually become somewhat of a sleeper hit throughout Japan. Through word of mouth and receiving positive reviews in Japanese magazines, the game sold well enough in Japan that Capcom would give the game the okay to sell in North America. However, during the localization, even though the title of Rockman was already in English, one of the vice presidents of the USA branch thought that the name Rockman was horrible and came up with the name Mega Man instead. Capcom Japan liked the name enough to give it the okay to change, and the game had finally hit North American shelves a couple weeks after the game's initial release in Japan. And so now, let's see what the team had cooked up. Thanks to the contributions to robotics from the man known as Dr. Thomas Light, robots now occupy a major role in society as they live alongside humans as everyday helpers and servants. Their purpose can range from the most mundane of tasks to the most specialized of jobs. However, jealous of his success, Dr. Light's former colleague and friend, Dr. Albert Wiley, has now taken 6 of Dr. Light's most powerful and complex robots, also known as Robot Masters, and reprogrammed them to do his bidding by terrorizing the world in a scheme to take over the planet. Rock, one of Dr. Light's personal robots, could not bear to witness the havoc that his brothers were wreaking on the world, and asked Dr. Light to change him into a combat robot, as Rock could not do anything in his current domestic state. Dr. Light was extremely against the idea. However, after some back and forth, Rock's strong sense of justice convinced him that if anybody could stop Wily and bring back peace to the world, it was Rock. After equipping him with an armor set and an arm cannon, Mega Man was finally created and set off on his journey to stop Dr. Wily. At this point, the actual game begins and you can pick from any Robot Master on this select list. When you decide who to confront first, you have to go through the stage, and towards the end of that stage, you'll enter a one-on-one fight with said Robot Master. Once defeated, you witness Mega Man taking their powers, and you are brought back to the select list and repeat the cycle till there's no more Robot Masters left. The name of the game is 3 things: running, jumping, and shooting, and though it's a simple set of skills, the game is built in a way where if you really wanted to, that's all you need to beat the game. Well, sort of, but I'll get into that later. The Buster fires fast and consistently, his run speed is paced nicely, and you're able to control the height and length of his jumps to a certain point so that you're not stuck committing to every single jump that you do. The weight of Mega Man is also pretty in the middle compared to his contemporaries, as he's not too floaty or he's not too heavy. Well, sometimes. I don't know why this happens, but if you're under a platform and it goes away while you're standing on it, Mega Man falls so quickly that he drops like a robot who drops down really fast when a platform disappears from under him. My only complaint about controlling Mega Man, albeit small, is that he has this momentum slide thingy at the end of his running animation that the development team definitely took from Super Mario Bros. And if you played any other Mega Man game past Mega Man 2, the slide is awkward and can take some time to get used to, and on occasion can be dangerous because I have absolutely overshot my run and have slid off to my death countless times. But like I was saying before, Mega Man as he is from the start can virtually take on any obstacle in his way if you're able to achieve such finesse and coordination with him. I think one of the rite of passages for anyone who's played a Mega Man game blind is picking a Robot Master at random and seeing whose stage you can beat first. However, with that being said, this notion that I accepted as normal not only with this game, but with the series as a whole had me stumble across a dilemma that nagged at me more and more as I began playing through this game myself. I know I have my guidelines to try to be as objective as possible when ranking these games, but I feel like I couldn't be objective because as I went through the motions knowing exactly what to expect, what order of Robot Masters to go in, how to deal with almost every obstacle and enemy that the game throws at me, it felt like the player's general reception towards Mega Man 1 and the other games in the series is so heavily tied to that player's own skill and knowledge of this game. Where do I draw the line between what is a tailored experience and what is a universal occurrence? Let me ask you this question. When playing a Mega Man game, which playthrough is the one that truly reflects the quality of the game? Is it the playthrough where you're slowly inching towards every enemy and platforming section because when you try to send it, the game actively wags its finger at you and hits you with some knowledge or execution check that causes you to be stuck on the same level for almost an hour? Or is it the playthrough where you're dodging and weaving and finishing the game faster than you can say, wow, I wondered how they approved this design for this Robot Master in this remake. And I want you to sit with that thought because not about the racially charged robot, by the way, the other question that I was asking. I think it's important to ask ourselves this question as fans because I want to know whose experience should be taking into account when critiquing these games. Either way, I'm going to cop out and say that the answer lies somewhere in the middle. And I'll talk about this more as I cover the game and go over more of my thoughts. But for now, I'll say this. Mega Man is a puzzle game disguised as a platformer where your ability to assess, adapt, and execute will be rewarded handsomely when you succeed and punished harshly when you fail. And so what we can judge a Mega Man game on is its ability to present the player with engaging obstacles, encouraging the player to learn from their mistakes, and compensating that player for the effort that they put in once they have learned to overcome the challenges in their way. And so with that being said, let's talk about the Robot Master and their stages. To preface, I think Mega Man 1 has some of the most recognizable Robot Masters in the series. Gutsman, Cutman, and Electman are some of my personal favorite designed Robot Masters throughout all the series, but I'd argue that the whole cast is emblematic, and when doing my research, I honestly grew fond of their designs as I learned what went into making these characters, how the henshin influences are shown through not only their bright color schemes and their unique silhouettes, but through their animation and seeing how each Robot Master has a unique pose when you pick them or when you're about to fight them. I also love seeing the earlier rough sketches for all the Robot Masters, like look at early Bomb Man. This is the face of a funny little guy who just wants to see stuff blow up. And then it's gonna be like Bomb Man crashing into the Twin Towers.
What the fuck?
We're gonna go with Cutman first as he is the first Robot Master highlighted on the select screen and we'll go clockwise from there. Cutman's stage, in all honesty, is Baby's first Mega Man stage, which I think was on purpose, but I'll talk about that later. There's not really a situation in the stage where you're extremely overwhelmed by how many enemies are being thrown at you at the same time, or having to perform highly demanding platforming sections where a simple slip-up can mean either falling into a bottomless pit or falling on top of this game's instant kill terrain, which are these pointy boys down here. I like how the stage mixes both horizontal and vertical level design to show the player what to expect in terms of how the game will work on a general basis and what direction they're most likely to go in to reach their goal. As you go through each screen, you see Kitamura's rules and ideas for enemy placements and behaviors get put to practice, where you really only see the same 3 or 4 enemy types throughout the stage, where they really only engage in one behavior, fighting them in waves of 3 or 5 at a time, and having to make the decision to either patiently maneuver through the obstacles with the goal of taking as little damage as possible, or, if you're insane like me, attempting to abuse the game's invulnerability mechanic, trying to power through each screen, hoping for the best. Regardless, the stage ends with a little rude awakening as you'll see this abomination of a robot slowly hobble towards you, and if you're not able to avoid it or defeat it by the time it gets to you, you will take a good chunk of damage. The end of each stage has a little hallway that you have to clear before getting to fight the Robot Master. 5 times out of 6, the corridor is filled with a simple enemy type that you can farm for some pick-me-ups before the fight. Lucky for us, Cutman just so happens to be Baby's first Robot Master because he gets absolutely bitched by the Mega Buster. He is one of 2 Robot Masters to physically recoil when getting hit by a pellet in this game, and each shot does a good amount of damage to him. So overall, if you need a step in the right direction to get the hang of this game, I recommend starting off here first. The weapon you get from Cutman is called Rolling Cutter, a pair of scissors that move like a boomerang when you shoot it. I'll go over how I feel about the weapons later in this video, but for now, I will say that I personally don't use many of the weapons in this game, specifically Rolling Cutter, but it does have its uses as it deals with enemies that the Mega Busters simply cannot destroy. Moving on, we have Gutsman, and I've never realized how short this stage is when you're not dying to this section at the beginning over and over and over again. Well, I only died once when recording footage, but when I was younger, I would die a lot here, mostly because I was an impatient little and try to clear the obstacle as fast as I could. But yeah, after this section, there's nothing really as stressful to deal with in this stage. Well, maybe for this kid again at the end, but before you know it, you're at Gutsman's door. Gutsman is your run-of-the-mill strongman, as he's powerful enough to stun you when he slams into the ground after he jumps. And with that amount of force, it will sometimes cause a boulder to fall on top of him, which he will catch and then throw at you. Gutsman, of course, is not fast and will just hobble towards you. If you're able to time your jumps to avoid the shockwaves of his landings and learn how to jump over the pieces of rock that scatter across the screen when he throws the big rock at you, he should be pretty easy pickings. The weapon that you acquire is the Super Arm, the only weapon that needs a specific object to use, as Mega Man is able to pick up these large blocks and he can throw them. Next up, we have Iceman, and this stage is my least favorite stage of the game for two reasons. Ice physics and the worst platforming staple from Mega Man games, the disappearing reappearing blocks. Ugh, yes, I know, me when I have to platform in the platforming game, but paired with the somewhat slippery traction that Mega Man already has, the constant and atrocious sounds that these blocks make when they appear, and these little fucking shitheads to add insult to injury when you fall on top of them because you f***ed up the puzzle, it's one of the few sections to this day that make me want to pull my hair out. I don't think I would have so much of an issue if the majority of the stage's progression was designed around having the player complete just these block puzzles, but the platforming section after the blocks is what really cements my feeling for the stage. You have to jump on top of these moving platforms, right? And that's easy enough, but why do I clip through the platform when I get hit? Why do these platforms have ice physics? Why does Mega Man's foot get clipped by the pellets, and why do I have to start from here when I die? Ah! Funny enough, Iceman's stage is my favorite aesthetics wise, and it has my favorite enemy of the entire game. Everyone say hi to Pepe. Oh my god, Pepe, where are you going? Pepe, no! Iceman is a pretty difficult fight, as he can shoot up to 6 projectiles in a wave pattern, and getting the timing to jump in between the gaps of his ice picks is easier said than done. After each wave, he walks forward and begins shooting another round of ice picks, making it even more nerve-wracking as you have less time to position yourself. This fight can be frustrating with how decimating his attacks can be. Once you defeat Iceman, you obtain Ice Slasher, which you cannot shoot 6 of them at a time like he can, but it does allow you to immobilize enemies. Next up, we have Bombman, and Bombman's stage makes me feel the same way I do about Cutman, where the level design is pretty rudimentary and straightforward, which is why I would consider Bombman another robot master a beginner can start the game with. I will say that this stage has moments where shit is flying at you in many different directions, and there is this spot in the stage that will have you sweating, but besides that, there's not really much I can complain about. Bombman spends the entire fight chucking bombs at you while he hops around the stage, and that's pretty much it. He has to be the easiest robot master again alongside with Cutman, and the weapon you acquire is the Hyper Bomb, which it's a bomb alright. So Fireman is up next, and if Iceman was my least favorite stage, how ironic is it that this stage is my favorite? There's no section in this stage that I would deem as unfair or unreasonable, well, maybe except for these two sections over here, but the lion does not concern himself with the damage that is done to him until he's about to die. Unlike Cutman's stage, but there's not really a hazard that the player has to worry about, I think that Fireman's stage presents the player with a lot of dangers and traps where you can fall into the lava below, but the only thing that would cause such a thing to happen would be the player making an error in his execution. All in all, this stage is very balanced in my opinion, and in fact, it is so fun, I think I'm gonna make a new category. Let's call it Certified Levels That F***. Maybe I can get a better working title. Fireman is another difficult boss fight as he chucks these walls of flames at you in rapid succession. They're pretty hard to dodge as they zoom across the screen, and every 2 or 3 flames leaves a little fire underneath Mega Man, forcing the player to land somewhere else. Thankfully, his flames do not hurt as much as other projectiles in this game, so when you're at full health when entering this fight, you should be able to win in a war of attrition. Defeating Fireman gives you Firestorm, which is just a Mega Buster, but on fire. But as a cool little bonus, it does give you this shield, which I think is pretty neat. Finally, we get to the last Robot Master, Electman, who has my favorite design out of all the Robot Masters, but who also has a stage that I absolutely despise. The unique thing about Electman's stage is that it's a vertical climb to the top, which makes progressing through the stage feel like a drag. Because of all the scrolling the NES has to do in order to load in a new screen, it feels like it takes forever. Paired with the fact that a simple mistake can have you lose all your progression and having no choice but to climb back up, I wouldn't blame you if this stage was your least favorite in general. Honestly, if you ever want to enact unusual and cruel punishments on someone, especially someone with ADHD or any kind of attention disorder. Have them play this stage because it feels like everything in this stage is designed to make you hold still for an uncomfortable amount of time. Honest to God, sometimes I forget that these assholes just come out of nowhere and start jumping you with their fucking stupid little laser thingies or whatever, and having to wait for these stupid little lightning ray thingies to go away makes me want to lose my mind. Even then, that's not even the most difficult part of the stage. The hardest thing about Electman stage is Electman himself. This motherfucker's like a truck. At full health, it takes 3 hits from his projectiles to kill Mega Man, and he is fast as he is the second Robot Master to reel back when getting hit by the Mega Buster, but the pellet only does 1 tiny unit of damage, so all I gotta say is, good luck beating this guy. After finally overcoming Electman, you are given Elect Beam, which in a rare case of video game logic, the weapon that is given to the player is by far superior to the version that the villain has. It shoots in 3 directions at once, its hitbox is huge, and you're given plenty of energy for this weapon, making it, for me, the best weapon in the game. After finally taking down all 6 Robot Masters, you're now able to go after Dr. Wily in what's virtually the game's second half. But before we go and do that, I want to stop and reflect a bit more on what we just played. For those unaware, I haven't mentioned a vital mechanic when going through my overview of the Robot Masters and their stages. It's the reason why I felt so conflicted in the first place when writing down my thoughts for the script, since many of my critiques and issues with these stages and boss fights in the video honestly aren't an issue for me in my actual playthroughs. Let me introduce you to the magical world of boss orders. The orders in which you defeat each Robot Master greatly affects your progress in other stages because each Robot Master is weak to another Robot Master's weapon, or having certain weapons can help make navigating through other stages easier. Yeah, Electman's a hard boss if you don't have Rolling Cutter. Yeah, Iceman's stage can be pretty tumultuous when you don't have the Jesus platforms. And yeah, Iceman's a pretty hard fight as well when I'm not smiting him with the Wrath of Zeus. So situations like that were the reasons I was going through my dilemma in the first place. When thinking about the rough patches in this game, it kept bringing me back to the question I asked earlier in this video, as well as constantly asking myself if my assessments and criticism about this game were fair, or were any potential problems that this game could have just boiled down to being skill issues that people just had to learn how to deal with. So after sitting on those thoughts and talking to my friend Quillen about it, my answer is this. The playthrough that truly reflects the quality of not only this game, but of all other classic titles is 2 playthroughs, the first and the last. Because the whole point of this game is growth. Ever since the beginning, that was one of the core traits that Kitamura wanted for this character. But it didn't only stop at Mega Man, he wanted the player to experience that as well. With each stage successfully maneuvered, each Robot Master defeated, with each weapon obtained, with each life lost in the attempt to get to that Robot Master in the first place, each game over that you will inevitably have to experience, these are all important to what makes Mega Man so fun, and why a lot of fans love and resonate with this character. Mega Man shows us how to grow stronger, how to get better each time in the face of adverse situations, even unfair circumstances, and having something to show for it at the end. There's a reason why you're given the choice to pick from any Robot Master, regardless of how prepared you are. There's a reason why Mega Man starts with nothing in his arsenal except for his Mega Buster. There's a reason why you're even allowed to keep the abilities at all. When you finally get to Wily and you look at all the blacked out spots around him, you're able to have a little moment to yourself, and whether you say it out loud or not, somewhere deep inside of you, you're going, "F yeah." And that is what this game and this whole franchise is about. When I finally made that realization, my thoughts about this game were clear. I now know where Mega Man 1 is fun and where it's a bit rocky. Sorry, I really wanted to get a pun in this video. Please don't leave, please don't leave, please don't leave, please don't leave. So, with that being said, let's save the world. In my opinion, the first stage of Wily's laboratory is the hardest stage in the game. The fact that the stage starts with 3 of these assholes, it's very obvious that the game isn't f***ing around. Every screen and section will have you go through all your weapons as the level indiscreetly places obstacles in a way where only 1 or 2 weapons can deal with it. There's even a section in the middle of the stage that requires you to use an ability that you could have accidentally skipped over. Once you make it to the end of this stage, you'll fight one of the most infamous boss fights in all the franchise, the Yellow Devil. I don't know how much of a hot take this is, but I've grown to enjoy this fight against the Yellow Devil as I've gotten older. I think the pattern in this fight is a fun way to test the player's execution and reflexes, but if you're having a hard time, honestly, just cheese the fight doing the select button pause trick, and don't let anybody put you down or shame you for using this strat, because when the game goes low, we go lower.
Yo, you you lagging? Nah!
The second stage of the lab can be pretty difficult as well. You'll have numerous enemies trying to push you into the many bottomless pits below. That is until you remember that you have God fighting on your side in the form of a cross-shaped lightning ray, and then things aren't so bad anymore. The stage also has you fighting Cutman and Electman, which again reinforces the idea of growth, as you'll certainly have the upper hand in these two fights. The actual boss at the end of this section though turns out to be you? Yeah, Kitamura admitted that the team was running out of space in the ROM, and in order to save data, they made Mega Man into a boss fight. Either way, this boss fight is pretty neat, as Copy Man's gimmick is that when you change weapons, so does he. But just like every other boss in this game, he does have a weakness. My method of beating this boss is to just push him away, standing in the corner spamming Firestorm from full screen, and hoping he doesn't get too close. If he does manage to get close though, he'll just get smacked by the shield. Works like a charm. The third stage in Wily's lab is by far the easiest, as you're falling down a couple screens and then having to run down a corridor with spawning enemies on the right side. If you spam pellets and keep running without stopping, you shouldn't be taking too much damage, and before you know it, you're at the third boss. The boss of this stage are these weird computer things that are inside bubbles that spawn from the openings that you see on the sides and up top. They're not much of a problem either, since their pattern is fairly easy to understand, as all they do is spawn on different sides of the room depending on where Mega Man is standing. They shoot these little bubbles while making their rotation around the room, but honestly, I would worry more about not getting smacked in the face with computers. Each computer gets faster and faster as you destroy them one at a time. My trick is to use the buster until it's at half health, and then finishing it off by throwing the 4 blocks at the remaining computers. Moving on to the fourth and final stage, this part is fairly short in terms of platforming and just length in general, but it can be dangerous if you're not careful. The game gives you one last middle finger, as the starting screen for this stage has enemies come in just in time to smack you in the face for trying to climb this ladder. The rest of the stage has you fighting Bomb Man, Fireman, Iceman, and Gutsman. And if you do manage to die to these guys at any point in the boss rush, don't fret, since you can always score another life, and also grab this unique item that restores all your weapon energy and health. After going through the gauntlet, you're finally able to confront the evil scientist who is waiting for Mega Man in his airship. Before I continue though, please look at this concept art of Mega Man reacting to this very situation. Me too, bro. Me too. Wily hurls these projectiles at you that aren't too hard to avoid, but damn do they do an insane amount of damage. It's not a final boss without a second phase. Lucky for us, the only change is the speed in which his ship moves back and forth, and how his projectile changes to lobbing these little pellets at you instead. After much trial and tribulation, we are able to finally destroy Wily's airship, causing him to fall out, and with nowhere else left to go, he begs for our forgiveness. Upon defeating Wily, Rock has finally brought peace back to the world, and to the tune of one of my favorite credit roll themes, he runs many miles back home, where Dr. Light and his sister Roll happily receive Rock outside their house. And with that, Rock goes back to enjoying a normal life once again. And with all that being said, I put Mega Man in B tier. Like I said, I put Mega Man in B tier. Put it right here. I would say that it's closer to an A rate. God damn, that actually kind of decked me in my nose, dude. And with that being said, I put Mega Man in B tier, and I would say it's closer to an A tier than it is a C. But with the amount of flaws in this game, I think that there are other games in this series that I would recommend first, especially to someone who is just trying to get into these games to begin with. Let's start with the negative, since I do want to leave off on a positive note. I think the most scathing thing I could say about Mega Man 1 is just how crude the game can feel. And I know that comes with the circumstance of being the first game in the series, but I can say with certainty that you'll have a moment where the game just doesn't want you to succeed. One of my favorite examples of this game not working as intended is when you're fighting a robot master and you manage to clutch the fight. However, if the Robot Master just so happens to shoot a projectile or already has a projectile out before they die, you still have to avoid it until it goes off screen, which doesn't sound so bad, but since the game locks you out of controlling Mega Man for a brief second, that one moment can lead you wide open for an attack if it's at point blank range. If that hit causes you to die, you will have to start the fight over again, or even worse, causing you to get a game over. Which all I can say to that is, don't let it be you, man, cause it's most certainly been me, and it's made me want to spill my Mega brains on the Mega floor. One more example I can think of besides, phasing through solid matter, is the fact that spikes kill you even if you're invulnerable. But to be honest, most of the jank that happens in this game feels like it's unintentional, which I don't blame the devs for entirely since it is the 1980s. We clowning this motherfucker. Take that sensitive ass back to Kirby's Adventure. Moving on, if you care about using the weapons in this game outside of their intended boss fights, you will be somewhat disappointed if you're trying to maximize your use of each ability. See, just like in life, the weapons in Mega Man suffer from power creep, and it's unfortunately a problem that much of the series is plagued with. I really don't have a solution in mind because I'm really just happy with my pea shooter, and as long as the level design has the Mega Buster in mind, then I'm often oblivious to the lack of creative uses for weapons in the game's level design. But regardless, I think we can agree on one thing. Hyper Bomb sucks absolute booty cheeks. On to the positive though, this soundtrack is so good, man. All the Robot Masters at minimum have decent themes, and the tracks in Wily's Lab really hit that menacing big bad final stage vibe. The boss theme in Wily's Lab has to be one of my favorite songs alongside the songs for Cutman, Fireman, and Gutsman. Though this game doesn't have my favorite OST of the series, Manami Matsume is one hell of a composer and has set the bar high for this franchise. The last thing I want to praise this game on is how calculated it is in its nature. And I'll use this game's select screen as an example. When writing for this script, I had this big light bulb moment, as I remember that many people in the late 80s were probably still not used to picking their own levels, and I assumed that a big chunk of first-time players would instinctually go to the first stage that the game would have selected by default. Besides Cutman being one of the easier Robot Masters and stages in the game, notice how the two Robot Masters next to Cutman would teach the player crucial information about the game, assuming they would naturally go in a clockwise or counterclockwise order during their first playthrough. You have Gutsman on your right, who teaches players that certain weapons are worse for dealing with certain Robot Masters, as Rolling Cutter only does 1 unit of damage to Gutsman, while the Mega Buster does 2. On the other side, you have Electman on the left that would teach the player that Robot Masters are weak to certain weapons, causing a hunt to find the optimal boss order. But the player doesn't have Super Arm to move the blocks to get Magnet Beam, so they'll have to come back to Electman stage at some point, which teaches the player that the boss weakness isn't the end-all be-all for good pathing. God, there's so many scenarios that I can talk about on how much someone's first playthrough can deviate from someone else's. Like, what if the player didn't beat Cutman? What if they rage quit and went to another stage like, I don't know, Iceman or Fireman? Or what if they went to Gutsman stage, beat him with the Mega Buster, and then went back to Cutman to find out that Robot Masters have weaknesses in that way? Man, it's moments like these that made me realize how much thought and intent went into everything about this game, even the most minute of details.
All in all, Mega Man was a first step in the right direction and a good foundation for what was to come. I believe that Kitamura and the rest of the team accomplished what Capcom set them out to do. I love the way Kitamura speaks about his time developing this title and how much he expresses that how this game was really a team effort to begin with. How everybody on board contributed so much even outside of their designated roles, and at the end of the day, the idea of Mega Man belongs to everyone on that team, not just himself. And with that, I need the fucking... That being said, I would say that this is a title you should visit at least once you get like 2 or 3 Mega Man games under your belt, so that way you can experience and see the core principles and concepts that really built this series from the ground up, and not just the classic titles, but the whole franchise.
Hell yeah. Good shit.
I put Mega Man in B tier. Damn, I didn't know you liked Mega Man that much. Holy shit.
It's my favorite of the 10. How dare you put this in B tier?
Oh shit. No, you're good.
It's fucking upside down.
Is it upside down? Oh shit.
Oh shit.
Bathe myself in all the games I could possibly find. Ow, fucking head. Fucking ow. Alright, I think that's good.
Well, let's just say that my school would have been called Wiley's Castle that coming Monday. Should I include that?
Oh shit. I got a bit of a misdemeanor.
What happened in story school?
No. We just didn't record anything at all.
Oh!
I'm just fucking kidding.
Oh, you fucking bitch.
Hi, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I know that I personally don't really stick to a lot of, to the end of a lot of videos when I watch them, but if you have, again, thank you so much. It really, means the world to me. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. I know there's a lot of things that I can improve on and that I'm actively, looking towards improving because, again, this is my first time making a 30+ minute video, and it was definitely an experience that helped me learn and put a lot of things into perspective on how to make my workflow even better so that I can avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made in this video. Hopefully the editing mended it to the point where it's tolerable, but I do know that I mispronounce a lot of words and that I say things incorrectly, so hopefully, for the next video I make much less of those kind of mistakes. So yeah, if anything, hopefully the Mega Man 2 video comes along better. I'm already working on the script for that, and yeah, thank you.